Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah Shir. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and we'll be learning today. Mir Hashem, I'm going to try to complete Mem Ches Amid Beis and do a nice piece of Mem Tes Amid Aleph to make up for yesterday's missed shir. My apologies for that, but situation beyond my control. So we are continuing to learn Hilchos Netillas Yadayim. We pick up today in Siman Kuf Nun Tes Sif Beis Mem Ches Amid Beis, 2 lines off the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch. Now, in the previous year, we began to learn the halachas of the keli, the vessel that you need to use for the Netillas Yadayim. I love the title that the Mechaber gave to this Siman. Be'eze kli Netillas Yadayim, which keli must we use to wash the Netillas Yadayim? The ketzad yavayu hamayim liyadav, and precisely how does the water have to come to your hands? So we're really getting into the nitty gritty here of Netillas Yadayim, and one of the halachas that we learned in the previous year was that the keli that you use for Netillas Yadayim has to be machzik revius. It has to hold a revius. You have to have a keli that could hold at least a revius, and the Mishnah Berurah told us, the Mishnah Berurah is cut in hay, that the reason for that is the ilav hachi ein shem kli aleha le'inyan netila. If it can't hold a revius, that in the context of the Netillas Yadayim, does haste nish kein keli. It's not called a keli if it can't hold a revius. Okay, then we learned later on in Sif Aleph, we learned if you have a keli that breaks. Now specifically, we were talking about it gets a hole. So you have a keli and it has a puncture. So the Mechaber told us it depends how big that hole is. And we saw a very interesting measurement, a very interesting shear. The Mechaber said, near the end of Sif Aleph, he said, V'hu gadol minekev, not there. V'imnikev, second line down. V'imnikev b'koines mashke. If it gets a hole of a size that would allow water to penetrate the keli and come in. Not that water is going to leak out. Water is going to come in. So you take the empty keli and you push it down into water. If water is going to penetrate from outside through the wall of the keli and come in, and the Mechaber explained that very clearly. He said, if water is going to come in, then the Mechaber told us, Batal mitaris kli, now it's no longer called a keli, and you can't use it for Netillas Yadayim. And then the Mechaber told us a very interesting thing. All the way at the end, if you look at the final phrase of Sif Aleph, the Mechaber told us, Va'afilu imhu machzik revius min hanekev ulamata. You cannot use this keli for Netillas Yadayim, even if from the level of the keli, let's say this is the keli right over here. Let's say there's a hole over here, right? Says the Mechaber, even if from here to the bottom of the keli could hold a revius, so you might think, what's the problem? I have a keli that could hold a revius. I could put a revius of mayim into this glass, and nothing is going to leak out because I have a revius below the level of the hole. What's the problem? The Mechaber said, no, you cannot use it. Even if it can hold a revius beneath the level of the hole, you still cannot use that keli. Now, we are up to our Mem Ches Amid Beis. Mishnah Berurah is cut in Zion. The size of the hole that we're talking about was b'koines mashke, a hole that will allow water to come in. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'im noised l'seiche mayim. If you don't want to measure the size of the hole that way, it's too cumbersome. You have to fill up a keli with water and then take your Netillas Yadayim keli and push it in empty and see if water comes in. It's too cumbersome, too difficult to do it. Says the Mishnah Berurah, I'll tell you a trick. If you put mayim into the keli, the yoytze tip achar tip, and it goes drip, drip, drip out of the hole, that is already a hole that's a size that if you would test it by sticking it into water, water would penetrate and water would come in. So again, if you fill it up with water and it gets drip, 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 drip coming out, that's already a hole of a size that would render this keli not usable for the Netillas Yadayim. Ois Kat and Ches, says the Mishnah Berurah, V'hu Gadol. You should know that this shear that the Mechaber is giving you, that the hole has to be of a size that will let water come in, that is a hole that is bigger than the size of a hole that would let water go out. Says the Mishnah Berurah, because if it would only be a tiny, tiny hole, that could be a hole that water would go out, but it would not go from the outside in, and in that case, then it's still considered a whole keli. It's considered a whole intact keli, and therefore you could still use it for the Netillas Yadayim from the top of the keli. Even if you get a hole all the way in the bottom of the keli, so then certainly this keli is not able to hold a revius beneath the level of the hole. The hole is all the way in the floor of the keli. What the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here is, if you have a pinhole, if you have a tiny hole that is allowing water to slowly seep out, but it's not big enough to allow water to come in, then even if that hole is all the way on the bottom of the keli, so you can't put a revius in this keli without water escaping. Water is going to escape through that tiny hole. Still in all, the Mishnah Berurah brings down because the Beis Yosef says that you could be matir to use that keli to like bottle mitaris keli makmas nekev zeh, because a hole of that size is not mevatel this keli from having a din of a keli. V'nireh, but the Mishnah Berurah says sheyesh lahachmer bazem lo b'shasat chak. We should be machmer unless it's a shasat chak she'en lo kli acher. If you don't have another keli, so then you're stuck. So then you could use this keli. But if you have another keli, better to be machmer. Ice cotton test. If you do have a hole that's big enough to allow water to come in, then the Mishnah Berurah said bottle mitaris kli. That's already bottle mitaris kli. It's not considered a keli. Says the Mishnah Berurah ice cotton test. Beinim akli hayom miyuchad lamashkin. This is true whether it's a keli that's a miyuchad lamashkin. It's a keli that's intended to hold liquids, like a drinking glass, or it's a keli that's not really miyuchad for use for mashkin. It's really not intended for beverages. Maybe you have a cereal taker. So that's a keli that's not miyuchad lamashkin, that's miyuchad la'oichlin. Now usually, you need a bigger hole to be mavatal a keli that's miyuchad la'oichlin than a keli that's miyuchad lamashkin. Still in all, over here, says the Mishnah Berurah, when the Mechaber says that if you have a hole that's big enough to allow liquid to penetrate in from the outside, it's bottle mitaris kli. That's beinim akliya yemuchad lamashkin oila oichlin. Kamoisha biyarti b'bir halacha divrei machal bottle, where we have a lengthy bir halacha over here. Ayin sham v'timtza nachas. Now we go to Sif Beis. In Sif Beis, the Mechaber says an interesting thing. The Mechaber says like this: I just told you that if the keli gets a hole, and the hole is big enough that it's going to allow liquid to come in, then even if the keli could be machzik a revius, even if it could hold a revius beneath the level of the hole, it's still bottle mitaris kli, and you cannot use it for Netillas Yadayim. Says the Mechaber, I'm going to give you a caveat to that halacha. Says the Mechaber here, Sif Beis, 2 lines off the bottom, Memches Amud Beis. V'hani mili, when is this true? Shenoitel derech piv lemaila. That is true if when you do Netillas Yadayim, you're going to try to do Netillas Yadayim from the top of the keli. So again, what's the Mechaber saying? This that I told you, that even if the keli could hold a revius underneath of the level of the hole, beneath the hole, it's still ois keli, and you can't use it for Netillas Yadayim. That's if you're going to use it for Netillas Yadayim by pouring water out of the top. Hani mili shenoitel derech piv lemaila. Why is it a problem? Shema shemimenu min hanekev ulemaila einoi chashiv kikli. Because realize, if you're going to wash the Netillas Yadayim by pouring water out of the top of the keli, right? Now there's a hole over here. Now you want to come up with a chap. You want to say, all right, there's a hole over here, but underneath the hole I could still hold a revius. So this is still a keli. It's still a keli that can be machzik a revius. All right, hold that thought. Now you're going to wash the Netillas Yadayim. How? You're going to pour, and you're going to pour from where? You're going to pour from the top. So that means that the water that's under the level of the hole is now going to travel above the level of the hole. so that you could pour it out from the top of the glass. So where are you doing the Netillas Yadayim from? You're not doing the Netillas Yadayim from the bottom of the glass, or at least you're not doing the Netillas Yadayim only from the bottom of the glass. You're doing the Netillas Yadayim from the top of the glass. Now the top of the glass is ois keli. The top of the glass is not a keli because the top of the glass can't hold any liquid. If you fill it up over the level of the hole, the water is going to come out. So the top of the glass doesn't have Tyrus Kli on it. Now you want to do the Netillas Yadayim from the top of the glass? Can't do that. You got to wash the Netillas Yadayim from a keli. So let's see it inside over here. V'hani mili shenaitel derech piv lamayla. When can you not use the keli if it has a hole in it? Even if under the level of the hole it could hold a revius, that's when you're washing out of the top of the keli. And what's the explanation? Shemasha mimenu min hanekev ulamayla, because the part of the keli that is above the level of the hole ain't a chashav kikli. Is it considered a keli? Because that part of the glass cannot be machzik revius, because all of the liquid will flow out of the hole that's beneath it. So in that case, that means that the water is not coming to your hands through a keli. Again, you want a taina that you have a keli from the level of the hole and down, but you're washing from up here, and up here doesn't have Tyrus Kli. So says the Mechaber, that's why it can't work. Aval, however, the last word of the Mechaber on Memches Amud Beis, Aval, however, im noitel derech hanekev. Let's say what you want to do is, I'm not going to wash the Netillas Yadayim from the top of the glass. I'm going to tilt the glass, and I'm going to allow the water to flow out from the hole. And I'm going to wash the Netillas Yadayim from the hole. Says the Mechaber, Avalim noitel derech hanekev, if what you do is, you wash the Netillas Yadayim from the hole in the side of the glass, shari, then it's mutter to wash the Netillas Yadayim, kevin shemachzik revius mimenu lamata, because from the hole and down, you have a keli that can be machzik revius. Shalom de shachap. It's a very cute chap that the Mechaber has over here. The whole problem is that you need to wash the Netillas Yadayim from a keli. So, all right, if you have a hole in the side of the glass, and from the level of the hole and down, it's machzik revius. So, you know what's funny about this glass? The bottom of the glass is a keli. The top of the glass is not a keli. So, if you wash out of the top of the glass, you're not washing from a keli. No good. If you wash from the hole in the side of the glass, then the Mechaber says, now suddenly it's considered that you are washing from a keli, and since you're washing from a keli, that would be okay for Netillas Yadayim. So we have a very cute chap here in the words of the Mechaber. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cotton Yud. Aval im noitel, if you wash from the hole, then you're okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'atam delamata min hanekev choshev adayin kli. V'atam, the reason for this distinction is delamata min hanekev, because the part of the keli beneath the hole, choshev adayin kli, still has Tyrus Kli. It's still considered a keli. Kevin shemachzik revius, because from there to the bottom, it could hold a revius. The masha noitel min hanekev, this that you're washing out of a hole in the side of a keli, that's not a chesaron in Hilchos Netillas Yadayim. That's fine. Heavy k'may noitel mi barza. That's like washing from a faucet, l'kaman b'sif hey, that we're going to discuss later on in sif hey. What does he mean by a faucet? What he means is like this. The picture that's coming to my mind right now is a hot water urn. A good old-fashioned hot water urn. It's definitely a kli machzik revius. You have a 20-gallon, that's huge. You have a 2-gallon or a 3-gallon hot water urn. It's a kli that's machzik revius. It's got a spigot at the bottom. Sometimes from the level of the spigot and down, maybe you don't even have a revius. Is that a chesaron? No, it's not a chesaron. That's the way the keli is made, like we're going to see in Sif Cut and Hay. The way the keli is made is, it's made to hold 2 gallons or 3 gallons of water when the spigot is closed, and when you want water, you open the spigot. So the spigot is not a chesaron in the keli. And you would be allowed to wash the Netillas Yadayim from the spigot. You could really fill it up the water, open the spigot, and get water on your hand, close the spigot, because that's not a problem. That's not a chesaron in the keli. So says the Mishnah Berurah, the hole is not a chesaron. The hole is like a barza. The hole is like a faucet. Now, you're looking at the screen and you say, Rabbi Weiss, what? The hole is like a faucet? The hole is not like a faucet. There's a major difference between a faucet and a hole. A faucet you could turn off. A hole you can't turn off. Yeah, but in the context of our halacha, that's not a problem. Why? That's only a problem if from the level of the faucet and down you don't have a revius. So the only way you have a keli is by shutting the spigot. Since you shut the spigot, it's a kli machzik revius. But in our case of a hole, from the level of the hole and down, it's machzik revius. So the bottom of the keli can hold a revius with the hole. And the fact that there's a hole, so a barza is also a hole. So you're washing from the hole. So big deal. Not a problem. So again, the mechaber started off by saying, you have a keli, it has a hole in the side, the keli is ice keli, you can't use it for the Netillas Yadayim. Even if from the level of the hole and down, it could still hold a revius, so you're going to taina, what do you mean? It's a good keli, it's a keli shemachzik revius. No, because you need to wash from the part of the keli that can hold a revius. If you're going to wash from the top, you're not washing from a keli that can be machzik revius. The top of the keli cannot be machzik revius. It's only the bottom of the keli that can be machzik revius. Oh, but if you wash from the hole, then you're not washing from the top of the keli. You're washing from the bottom of the keli. The bottom of the keli can be machzik revius, so the mechaber said that that's okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the fact that there's a hole, that in itself is not a chesaron. That's like a barza. And a barza we're going to see in Sif Hay is not a problem. Now the Mishnah Berurah is going to bring a dissenting opinion. All of this, says the Mishnah Berurah, Hu das HaShulchan Aruch. This is the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch. Shehetik ledina es divrei HaTorah, who accepts the words of the Torah as halacha l'maisa. This Sif Beis is basically taken straight out of the Torah. So the mechaber is posketing like the Torah. Aval, however, says the Chavetz Chaim, harbe paiskim cholkin bazeh. Many paiskim disagree with this Torah. And they hold the bekli cheres hamiyuchad lamashkin. If you're talking about a kli cheres that is made for use with liquids, im hayanekev kikoinis mashke. If it has a hole in it the size that would allow liquids to come in, chashiv kulai shever kli. The entire keli is considered a broken keli. The ein noitlin mimenu klal, and you can't use it at all. Afilu derech hanekev, even through the hole, because the entire keli is considered broken. And they don't accept this comparison to a faucet. Again, the Torah wants to say that you see from Sif A, from the discussion of a faucet, that an opening somewhere low down on the keli does not make it a shever keli. So too, you have a hole in the side of the keli. That alone does not make the whole keli a broken keli. The top of the keli is a broken keli because it can't be machzik revius, but the bottom of the keli is intact. It could be machzik revius. So the Torah is nachis. He agrees to this idea of kind of splitting the keli in half, but other poskim do not, and they make a very interesting, very simple distinction between this and the case of the barza. They say ve'ein doimel a barza. This is not similar to a barza. The hasab also b'tchila lekach. By the barza, that's the way the keli was made. The keli was made with a spigot. Over here, it wasn't made with a spigot. It got a hole. Everybody's going to look at that keli and say it's broken. You're going to come with a lumdus. You're going to say, yeah, it's broken, but the bottom is still machzik revius, so the bottom still has teres kliya love. All right, it's a lumdus. But it's definitely a broken keli. It's definitely a broken glass. And there's a hole in it. Umikam akim, nevertheless, says the Chavetz Chaim, emain like kliacher. If you don't have another keli to wash with, yesh lismech al dasa mechaber lahakshir derech hanekev. You could be saimech on this mechaber, and you could be machshir washing through the hole. He brings this down from the Chai Adam. Ubekli cheres hamiyuchad la'oichlin. Now, how about a kli cheres, an earthenware keli that's miyuchad la'oichlin? It's not made for holding beverages. It's made for holding food. The example I gave was a cereal taker. I don't know why that's the first thing that's coming to my mind, but it is. It's a container that's made to hold food, not liquids. And in the brackets, the Chavetz Chaim says, why is that a distinction? Because remember that a lot of this is based on Hilchas Tumah V'Tara. Now, in order for a keli to be makabel tumah, it has to be considered a keli. A broken keli is not makabel tumah. Question is, what makes a keli a broken keli? So when it comes to a kli hamiyuchad la'oichlin, when it comes to a keli that's made for holding solid foods, you need a bigger hole to make it ois keli. Why? Because the Gemara tells us that if somebody has a kli that's miyuchad la'oichlin, so if he's used to using it for small foods, and it gets a hole that lets the small foods fall out, so he'll start using it for bigger foods. So if he had a keli that was miyuchad la'oichlin, and he used it for flour, and now it gets a little hole so the flour, which is a powder, can come out, he'll start using it for rice. If it gets a bigger hole and now the rice could fall out, he'll start using it for macaroni. If it gets a bigger hole and now the macaroni could fall out, he'll start using it for spaghetti. Maybe spaghetti is thin, it could fall out. Fine, he'll start using it for cookies. But, you need a bigger hole. Eventually, so the Mishnah Berurah says, when it comes to Tumah V'Tara, we say, once a keli gets a hole that olives could fall out, now already it's considered ois keli. So the yisoid over here, the point over here is that a keli hamiyuchad la'oichlin, you need a bigger hole to make it ois keli. So says the Mishnah Berurah, if you have an earthenware keli that's made for use with solid foods, where the shear to make it ois keli is a hole that's big enough that olives could fall out, or by kelim that are not earthenware. When it comes to other types of kelim, this shear of a hole that's the size to let in liquid, that's a shear that's unique to a kli cheres. But other types of kelim, metal kelim, those kind of kelim, you need a bigger hole than kainis mashke to make it ois kli. Nirami Magen Avram, it would seem from the Magen Avram, that by those kind of kelim, everybody would agree that you could wash through the hole. Vedan, you should know, based on what we're going to learn later on in Kosam Basiv Gimel, according to the conclusion of many of the Achronim Sham, let me break that up. According to the maskan of these achronim that we're going to see over there in Kuf Samach Beis, lo yeh muter derech hanekev, it would only be permissible to wash through a hole. Lo yeh muter derech hanekev litoil, rak kishanekev yeh al kol panim gadol ktsas. The hole has to be at least big enough shekiluach hamayim, that the flow of the water out of the hole, yeh nishpach mimenu, will flow out of it, it will pour out of the hole, beli hefsik. You have to have a hole big enough that a continual stream of water will flow out. So if you want to wash through a hole in the side of the glass or in the side of a metal keli, it's got to be at least big enough that you get a continuous stream of water coming out. Not that it's going to be glug, 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 or drip, drip, drip. Because if it's not at least that big, it would be also lechatchila to wash through that hole, because that would be like doing a partial washing and then a partial washing, which is not acceptable, we're going to see. And says the Mishnah Berurah, everything that we're being matir here is all b'shas atchak. Aval lechatchila bevadai nochad lahader shia keli shalem. Lechatchila, certainly we should be looking to wash with a whole intact keli. Ois cotton yud aleph here on Mem Tesam and Aleph says the Mishnah Berurah, the Mechaber said that the kunz, why you could wash through the nekev, is because since from there and down it holds a revius, so the bottom of the keli is considered a keli. Says the Mishnah Berurah, yesh be'achrayim shekasvu, there are those amongst the achrayim who write, the chol zeh b'nikev. This entire discussion is only germane to a keli that developed a hole, a puncture. Avo benistak, but if the keli is cracked, if the keli develops a split, then afim machzik revius lamata me'asedek, even if the keli could hold a revius underneath the crack, Va'afilu eino rak kemoitzi mashke. And even if that crack only allows water to escape the keli, but it does not allow water to go into the keli, puzzle, that keli is puzzle, and it cannot be used for Netillas Yadayim. Why? The choshev kishever kli al yedei zeh gamla inyan tumah. Because even in regards to the halachas of tumah v'tahara, a keli that develops a split is considered a broken keli. Fatam. And the reason is mishum debenistak. When it comes to a keli with a crack, with a split, we have a new concern. Asida lihisadek kula. Now we're afraid that the entire keli is going to bust. A hole does not mean that the keli is going to fall apart. But a crack, now we're afraid the keli is going to split apart, and it's not considered an intact keli. Va'ataz chaylik alav, the Taz disagrees with this opinion. The Soiver, and he holds the nistak dina kenikev, that a crack has the same halacha as a hole. Ve'ein lifsarl, and we shouldn't passel the keli, ela im ken yoytzei derech hasedek tip achar tip, unless the crack is such that water is taka dripping out, one drip after the other. Da'oz heviki kainis mashke, so that means that it's big enough to allow water to penetrate from the outside. V'ayin b'chai Adam, the Mishnah Berurah says, take a look at the chai Adam, shekosov writes, dim ein loy kli acher, if you don't have another keli, yakal lismach al das hataz lahakal bazeh, you could rely on this taz, and you could be makel to use a keli with a split. Va'afil das abach, and even according to the machmerdik opinion of the Bach, near it would appear the beklina chayshes, if you're dealing with a copper keli, or sha'ar kli matchis, or another type of metal keli, k'may blech, like sheet metal, the or something similar. The chazokim heim, those are strong. Validation nistak tzas, and by virtue of a small crack, lo yisade kula, we don't have to be concerned that the whole thing was split. Like gara nistak minikev, then certainly we don't look at a cracked keli as being any worse than a punctured keli. Vayin b'bir halacha, take a look at the bir halacha shetzidadnu, where we take the position the begleis chuchis that when it comes to glass kelim, afilu im asedek tak ma'oid, even if it's a very, very, very thin crack, she'eno afilu k'maitzi mashke, and it doesn't even allow liquid to leak out. Im eina keli yachal lekabel ato hachamin kitzainen, if the keli cannot take cold water or hot water, we know that glass will oftentimes break from extreme temperature. Once it has a split, it definitely is more olul to break. So a glass keli that has a split that you can't pour cold or hot water into, ein litel by, you should not use it for the Netillas Yadayim. The Taz writes, whether or not it works, whether or not it is effective in the context of Hilchos Netillas Yadayim to plug a hole, Yesh Lilmaid, we can learn out that halacha mimashakasav a Ravid Perek Yudalad Hilchos Kelim from something that the Ravid writes in Perek Yudalad of Hilchos Kelim in the Rambam. De betit eno moil b'shum kli, to stop up a hole in a keli using mud, that is not effective. V'chein bismartutin, or to use some kind of rags or fabrics to plug up a hole, that is not effective. Ubezefes, but if you use pitch, moyel leklicheres dafka, that would work for a klicheres because pitch is considered to be a type of cheres. So that's considered that you're stopping up the hole with the same with the same material as the rest of the keli. So that's considered a bona fide repair. Whenever you stop up a hole using the same material as the keli, for example, if you would stop up a hole in a metal keli by welding on another piece of metal or filling it with solder, or you make a wooden plug and you fill up a hole in a wooden keli, that certainly is effective. Adam. Okay, we have some more time over here. Let's go weiter. Siv Gimel. Interesting case. Near the end of the top line on Mem Tesam and Aleph. Kli shemachzik revius kishasoimchem oisai. Now, what's coming to my mind right away, I don't know if these are still extant or extant, depending on how you like to pronounce it. Either way is considered acceptable. I remember a time when there was these kind of disposable types of cups where there was a reusable plastic outside and there were these paper inserts that you snapped into the outside plastic piece that had a handle. So this is a very cute chap. You had a plastic piece that couldn't hold anything. It was open on top and on bottom, and it had a handle. But you could take a paper filler and you snap it in, and now you could have a hot drink, a cold drink. When you finished, you take out the paper filler, you throw it in the garbage, you save the plastic outside. Now those paper inserts were pointy at the bottom, so you can't stand that up on a table. Now, if you hold it, or if you put it into the plastic holder, it is a kli shemachzik revius. It could hold a revius of liquid. But if you don't have the plastic outside, or you don't hold it in your hand, yeah, you could pour a revius in it, but you can't stand it up on the table, right? It'll fall over, and all the liquid will spill out. It won't even hold a revius. So what's the din of such a keli? You have a keli with a pointy bottom, but it holds a revius of liquid. But not if you put it down. If you put it down, it's going to spill. Is that considered a kli shemachzik revius or not? Says the Mechaber. Kli shemachzik revius kishesoimchim oisai. A keli that can hold a revius if you support it. V'im lo yisbechu, but if you don't support it, yishbechu amayim, all the water will spill out. V'lo yishar by revius, or at least enough liquid will spill out that you won't have a revius. Says the Mechaber, ain't a keli. That is not considered a keli. Hilkach, therefore, based on that, says the Mechaber, migufa shel chavis, the stopper of a barrel, shehi chada, which was pointy at the bottom. So imagine you have a cork in a wine bottle. So imagine you have a stopper, like a cork, that you're going to put into the opening, into the mouth of a barrel. But it's not like a cork. A cork is flat on top and flat on bottom. Imagine you have a stopper that is fat at the top and pointy at the bottom. So you stup it into the opening, and it goes in, but then it gets fatter near the top, so it gets tight. So that's your stopper. Now, you took that stopper, and you hollowed out from the top, from the flat, fat top, you hollowed it out, and now you made a hollow that could hold a revius. It's a kli shemachzik revius, but it's pointy at the bottom. So you put it down, it's all going to spill out. So says the Mechaber, Hilkach, megufa shel chavis, the stopper of a barrel, shehi chada, that's pointy at the bottom, ve'ena mekabelis revius, and therefore, even if you hollow out the top, it can't hold a revius, shaloi misumeches, unless if it's not supported. Ain't noitla bimena. You can't use it for Netillas Yadayim. So you're traveling somewhere and you're making a delivery of barrels of wine, and you want to wash for your tuna fish sandwich, and you've got these pointy stoppers, and you say to yourself, hey, I can hollow out the stopper and I'll have a kli shemachzik revius. Says the Mechaber, no, because it's not a kli shemachzik revius. Because if you try to put it down, it's going to fall onto its side, and all the liquid is going to spill out. But, says the Mechaber, v'im hirchiva milamata, but if you widen it at the bottom, so maybe you cut off the pointy part, ad shebekabelis revius, until you end up with a keli that can hold a revius, kishihi yosheves, when you stand it up, shaloi misumeches, without supporting it, then noitla bimena. Then why not? You have a bona fide keli. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah. Ice cut and yud beis. Kli shemachzik. If you have a kli that can be machzik or revius, but the problem is it's got a pointy bottom, you can't stand it up. B'Torah Beis Yosef Isa. In the Torah, in the Beis Yosef, it says, Dehu Hadin, the same halacha applies, meaning we're going to use the same determining factor to decide if something is considered a keli. Dehu Hadin b'shever kli. If you have a broken piece of a keli, shehu machzik revius shaloi b'musumach. If you have a broken piece of a keli, and in that broken piece of a keli you could pour in a revius mayim, and it could hold a revius mayim even if you don't support it, you could put it down on a flat surface, and it will hold a revius mayim, then it's a keli. Kigoin, for example, says the Mishnah Berurah, chavis, you have a barrel, shenechlika la'arka, and it's split along its length. The length of a barrel is its height. That's the longest measurement of the barrel, is its height. So let's say this is a barrel, and it's split along its length. And now you have two sides. Now, since the glass is curved, when you have two sides, right, one side of the barrel, it definitely has three sides. It has this wall, it has a bottom, the curved bottom, it has this wall, it has the floor of the barrel, might still be at least partially intact. You might at least have half of it, so that's three walls, and maybe you have a little bit of a rim even at the top. If you lay the half of the split barrel down on its side, it very well may be able to hold a revius. Now, there's no doubt that this is a shever keli. It's a broken barrel, but it's brought down in the Torah and the Bis Yosef. If you have a shever keli, if you have a broken section of a keli, but that broken section of a keli could be machzik or revius shaloi b'musmach, it could be machzik or revius without support. You could put it down and it could hold a revius. That is a bona fide keli. So again, ice cut yud beis. But Torah Beis Yosef is a dua did b'shever keli shu machzik or revius shaloi b'musmach. Kigoyin, for example, chavis. If you have a barrel, sheneklik la arka that's split along its length, shehi mekabelas al dafna, it could hold on its side wall, revius, a revius of liquid shaloi b'musmach, even if you don't support it. So that would be okay. That's the Torah in the Beis Yosef. However, it says the Mishnah Berurah, yesh oimrim, there are those that say, ta'afilu lididhu, even according to this Torah in the Beis Yosef, ein lahakal bazeh, you should not be makel on this, ela im ken yichada litashmish. Only if after the barrel busted, you taka set aside this broken half of a barrel for such a use. In other words, if the barrel broke and you said, what am I going to do? My barrel busted, I'm throwing it out. Then you looked at it and you said, wait a second, hold it. I could use this half a barrel. I could use it. I could lay it on its side in my garage, and I could use it to hold liquids. If I have liquids that I need to contain, I could still use it. So then you were yichada, you set it aside for such a tashmish. So then you were makshiv it as a keli. But if not, if you were going to throw it out, so then it's considered a shevi keli and you can't use it. So there are those that say, don't be makel, like this Torah in the Bis Yosef, ela im ken yichada l'tashmish. V'ayin b'magen Avram sifkat and gimel sheherich bazeh. The Magen Avram discusses this at length. The Ha'elah, and he reaches the decision to ein lahakal bazeh b'chol gavni, that you should not be makel with this at all. You shouldn't go with this Torah in the Bis Yosef at all. The hayil v'hi shever keli lo chashiva klal, because since it's a busted piece of a keli, it has no chashivas of a kli, and you can't use it. V'chenu das agra b'yurei. V'chol zeh dafka b'defanes hakli v'chanal. However, says the Mishnah Berurah, that's only when you're using the wall of the keli. So like the example we just gave, the barrel split in its height, and now you have two sides, and now you want to lay down one side of the barrel and use the side wall. However, kli shenifchas milamala. Let's say you have a keli that's split in its top, in its height. Meaning, again, this is your keli, and it's split all the way around so that the top of the glass broke off. So now I only have the bottom of the glass, and the bottom of the glass could be machzik or revius. So now, l'chayra, I have a keli that can be machzik or revius. Now the problem is that it's a shever kli. It is a broken piece of a keli. The whole top broke off, but I still have a keli that can be machzik or revius. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Aval kli shenifchasa milamala, a keli with the whole top broke off. V'yechayla lamed al shuleha, the keli could still stand. The floor of the keli is fully intact. Shaloi b'musmach, and you don't need to support it. Ulekabel revius, and if it broke, let's say at the halfway mark, the bottom could still hold a revius. Nira, then the Mishnah Berurah says, it seems, it appears, the yesh lahaka litoba, you could be makel to use it for the Netillas Yadayim, im ein loy kliacher, if you don't have another keli. However, and this is very interesting, however, sheyizar litoba b'mokom shenifchas, you have to make sure to pour from the place where it broke, shesham hakli nemucha, at the lowest point in the break. What does he mean? So again, imagine that the top of this glass broke off. Now, if the top of the glass breaks off, it's not going to break in a clean, straight line. It's usually going to break in a jagged line. make sure that when you wash, you pour the water from the lowest point on the break line. So if there's one place where there's a jagged break and it went down low, make sure you pour the water from that low point. Why? Because if you pour the water from a high point, oh, wait a second. That part of the keli is not a keli. Just like we said at the outset of the shear. If you have a hole in the side of the glass, you can't, even if from below the level of the hole to the bottom, it can be machzik or revius. But you can't wash the Netillas Yadayim from the top. Why? Because you're pouring the water out of the top of the glass, and the top of the glass is not a keli that could be machzik or revius. Because the top of the glass can't hold water. Everything will leak out the hole. And you're washing the Netillas Yadayim from the top. We said you can't do that. Same svara over here. If you have a jagged break, if you pour the water out of a high point on the break, then you're not pouring from a keli that can be machzik revius, because that part of the keli can't hold liquid. All of it would leak out of the low point of the break. So you have to make sure to wash from the low point of the break. Says the Mishnah Berurah, ach yizoyer. Be very careful. Where is it? Ach sheyizoyer lital b'makom shenivchas. You have to pour from the break point, sheshama kli nemucha, at a place at the low point of the break. The besafa acheres, because at a different edge, at a different point on the rim where it's high, sha'akli gavoya, where the kli is still intact higher up, kama achreina machmirin, maybe achreina would be machmir, sphere lahu, and they hold the loichashiva kli, that part of the glass is not considered a keli. Kevin chana kli machzik hamayim b'makamahu, because that part of the keli can't hold water. Shenishpachen derech hatzad shenivchas, because all the liquid would leak out of the low point of the break. And now the Mishnah Berurah says another thing, and he brings this down from the Chayyadim. If you have such a keli, so you have the bottom half of a broken keli, and we're being makeled to allow you to use it so long as it's machzik revius and you pour out of the low point of the break, but now, even if this keli develops a tiny hole, even if it's a hole that will only let water escape but won't let water come in, so we're usually not makshiv such a hole, now you should be makbir not to use this keli at all. Why? Because now already you have a double problem. It's a shever kli, it's a broken keli, but we're being makbir to allow you to use it because it can be machzik revius shaloi b'musmach. And now it has a hole in it? No. A shever keli with a hole? That's not considered a keli, and that you can't wash from. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we got a lot done. We're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time, Yitz Hashem, with Mishnah Berurah, Ice Cut and Yodalid. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Discussing limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua's for first parnasset shidduchim to all those in need, and we should be zeichet to see the Bias Tzedek b'mehera v'yameinu amen. Be well.